think that back then, decades ago, we were still trying to figure out what the role of space was and its potential profitability to the African continent. And decades after, it's almost still the same, discussions and, potential contributions into the space industry. You discussed, some of the challenges that you are faced, and I wanted to just have your feedback on the direction you foresee the space industry moving, and what the role of the African space professional will be in the coming years. And I ask this based on your contributions as the founder of the African Space Foundation.
Now, maybe I will start my response from the last comment you made. When we talk about the African Space Foundation, which is trying to be active, but given the condition we have on the continent, it's not easy. But the African Space Foundation by itself, its goal is to transform Africa, if it can, into a continent with a vibrant knowledge, understanding, development and utilization of space, science and technology through what? One, a total engagement with science and technology, the critical foundation of the space enterprise. And two, to be able to develop infrastructures that are sustainable, that are adequate, and that can meet the needs of its people and those of its international challenges and obligations. So if that is going to ever happen, then Africa needs to ask itself a number of questions. We want to get involved with space. Should my country get there? Does my country have the resources to get there? And again, what are the justifiable justifications for our getting into space? I'll give you an example. I've seen in writing countries saying that if we launch rockets from our equatorial orbit, the rest of the world will come to us. And the amount of money we are going to generate or revenue we are going to generate for government is going to be so much that the rest of the world will be launching from us, and Nigeria or Kenya or all the other countries on the equatorial countries, they don't need anything else except to focus on that. For me, that is not a justifiable justification, because you do not have the science and technology foundation to support that. Most of what we are doing in space today are satellite projects. In other words, you are aiming to be seen that you have a hardware in space. Were you the one that developed it? Were you the one that built it? Were you the one that launched it? All you did was to take your hard-earned currency and bought it. And most Africans will never see a satellite with their naked eye. So they have to have faith in what they are hearing. But when they cannot see what the space investment is doing for them, I give you an example. As you and I are speaking right now, there are over 50 communication satellites hanging over Africa. Many of them serving the key African countries of Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and so on and so on. And yet, we say we are going to compete with them and put our own communication satellites in space. Now go back and look at the communication satellites African countries have put in space. To what extent have people in their own country patronized them? And if you have one satellite in space and another one has 15, whom am I going to patronize? If your one satellite fails and I put all my eggs in your basket, where do I get my communication opportunities when you don't have that physical asset in space anymore? So my challenge right now, which I call a major African challenge, is we need the leadership that will understand that we need to walk before we can run. And to walk in space means we need to ensure that our STEM programs, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, are up to par in our respective countries. Every African country cannot be a space country. It's not real. More especially, where is the money? And if you put all that money, how much does it cost to launch a satellite? To buy it and to manage it. And most of the time when you're managing that satellite, it's probably being managed for you by the launching state. So what are the obligations to that state, you know? So my request to us is that, and let me buttress that argument with my experience in Nigeria in 1979. I went to Nigeria in 1979 to organize my first training course on remote sensing in Nigeria at the University of Ibadan. And the then Minister of Science and Technology met me with two lecturers, junior lecturers at Ibadan, pleading with me to plead with him to give them, to support their proposals for some research funds. To cut a long story short, this minister is in my book. I have this case I'm describing to you in my book. This minister said, no, there are obstacles. I just came back from Germany. I saw a machine there. It can do everything for us in Nigeria. And I said, sir, when that machine breaks down, how are you going to service it? He said, look, you live abroad too long. You don't understand what I'm saying. I said, I really understand what you are saying. These are young people. If they do well, 4 or 5 years from now, we can always say, oh, these are our own experts. And we don't have to run abroad. But you are disregarding them. It's not in Nigeria's best interest to do so. The same thing when Nigeria said it was going to buy the first satellite. I was the only one out of a committee of 7 that stood against it. And of course, it was like I broke everybody's egg. I was no longer their favorite after doing that, you know? And I said, no, what is this? More especially when I look at the contract we signed, which was not in Nigeria's best interest. That every problem we have with the satellite we bought, it has to be adjudicated in the British court, under British law. But that satellite was built and designed with Nigerian money. What is this? So, Africa needs to realize that space is a darling of everybody, yes, but it takes a certain mindset to get there. And the political leadership needs to take his face off the shiny material or metal in space. What can space do for the civilians, for the local citizens? Is it bringing food to the table? Is it helping them in their communication? How good is the communication in Africa today? In spite of the fact that a few of the countries have now communication satellites. If you have a remote sensing satellites, how well are you using this to manage your agriculture, to manage your water resources, to manage your roads, to manage your transportation? So your security. Many of you have satellites that are acquiring data all over the place. But when you now need the data, particularly in the case of Nigeria with Boko Haram and everything, where are you getting the data? from locally, or you have to still go abroad. So then that comes to the young generation. You want to know where are the young people coming from? One, if you look at all the countries that are really doing well in space, their first seed was planted at the individual universities in each of these countries. When you look at America doing well in space, it all started from Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a laboratory of California Institute of Technology. When you look at Britain sending microsatellites into space, it started from Surrey University. That is where Surrey Satellite Technology Limited started, and that it was that Surrey Satellite Technology Limited that built Nigerian satellite, and the one they sold to Korea, the one they sold to Algeria, and so on and so forth. So there are all these capabilities, but because we are, now you go back home to all American, all Nigerian, African universities, where are they doing the same thing? There's only one university that is above all others, and that is the Stellenbosch University in South Africa. And when you get to Stellenbosch and you take the papers and look and get to the bottom of it, it got that capability from the apartheid era, where they were devoting a lot of money through the Defense Department of South Africa to build up a capability that will enable them to know everything that was going on, including a green sat they developed. They didn't launch, but they developed it. Okay, and Stellenbosch has developed much capability. From that effort at Stellenbosch, many of the people that graduated from Stellenbosch are now working on their own private level, young men and young women, doing the little bit and using their capability to support what is going on in South Africa. When you look at Kenya and Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria and Ghana, and a few others, there are a lot of science and technology hubs in many of these countries. But they are struggling. Why? Because in addition to the absence of research and development efforts at our universities, our private sector is not there. And these young people who are now vibrant and doing a lot, they are getting energized only through their collaboration with efforts in other lands, not locally, because we are not building any satellite, we are not building any car. So whatever they can produce in some of these hubs, it is to service the needs of, or to provide components for establishments in Canada, in the United States, in Britain, and so on and so forth. So that those are coming up. But you can harness all of this for Africa's benefit. If more, to start with, this it becomes a collaborative effort rather than a one-by-one individual effort. Number two, your parliament knows what it's doing, and if it doesn't know what it's doing, it can invite its own brains to help in putting things together. Use your intellect to bring the brains among. Africa has a lot of brains, but because we don't use them, many of them are outside Africa. So we need to use our intellect at home and abroad. Because I wrote an article in 1981 when they were still publishing the West Africa magazine. Actually, it was the first paper I wrote when I got to the UN. And I wrote it as Technology Development in Africa. It is a 2-page article. And the focus of it was Africa's problem is human resources development and utilization. We develop them, that's not a problem, either locally or abroad. It is the utilization. non-utilization, underutilization, or misutilization. And as long as you continue with that, we are not going to make any progress. And it is incumbent on our political leaders to sit down and analyze this. And some of these young people belong to this category of knowledge, skills, capabilities that need to be used for Africa's development. They are there, we have them, but we are not harnessing them. We are chasing something else.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that very detailed answer. I wanted to follow up on your last comments to ask about your interactions with space entrepreneurs, particularly in Africa, and what you think is the challenge to their growth, and if the lack of significant numbers and levels of governmental demand for their activities is what is affecting the soft landing of these space entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you just answered the question yourself. I'm serious. You've answered the question yourself. The government understanding is not there. If that is there, and you have a lot of, in most parliaments in Africa, you have committees of science and technology. To what extent are they actually pushing the understanding of that science and technology? To what level are they promoting the robustness of science and technology in our secondary schools and our universities? To what extent are they funding and supporting research and development programs in our universities? So that is one program. When you go to University of Birmingham in Britain, or University of Singapore, or you come to the United States, you go to places like Caltech, or people talk about MIT, or Dexter University here in Philadelphia, you find one thing they are doing. Maybe one or two universities in Africa are doing so, I don't know, and I pray they do. There is what we call the growth, or not the growth, the development and growth of the entrepreneurial spirit, to be an entrepreneur as part of your academic program, whereby you not only transfer this paper knowledge that you see on paper and on the blackboard or in the video to the student, but you get the student to translate this knowledge into practical products that are useful for the community. And many of these students and their professors work on this as the student goes through the process of receiving an education in this institution. The private sector is involved. It's probably providing the funding research grant to this effort. This is what is happening all over the world today. We need to study something like that. I'm not saying copy it. Copying is not going to be the solution, but understand it, learn it, and ingest it. And thereafter come home and implement it. So that when the African student comes out as a graduate, it's not just a slide rule graduate or a calculator graduate, but it's a practical graduate. And that is why companies like Dangote and Shell, I remember, I think I even have it in the book as well. They graduate, they go to universities, they get people who are degree, who have already received their degree, but they discover that they can barely do anything. So they take them through an educational process of another, like an intern for 1 year. And whoever blends into that internship and can prove that it's a product that can enhance their own productivity, then you become part and parcel of us. But as I said, you look also at Brazil. But before Brazil, you look at Europe, you look at India. These are the countries I want us to look at as examples. The Indian government, when it got independence, also passed a law. And what does the law say? They are going to give scientists a place in decision-making in parliament. And that means not that they belong to a political party, but they are used as advisors to government. Not advisors because I know you or you know me, but because you have something to contribute to the development of my country. They have them there, and they are using them non-stop. And in the case of India, India went in 1974 to ask the United States to loan it a satellite, ATS-6. Not for them to buy one, loan us this satellite. You have a communication satellite in space that you are not using, but it's good, it's active. Loan us for 1 year. It was a period of where everybody was interested in space, but that was the Indian approach, and they got that satellite. And they used that satellite to teach the Indians everything you can imagine. It's called, and then they ended up, they taught them a lot about hygiene, about literacy, about agriculture, and so on and so forth. And when you talk of telemedicine, it started also at that time. So they ended up building village resource centers, like a community center. They ended up with about maybe 50 of them in 1974, 75. Today, there are over 470-something such centers in India, where now they bring advisors from the universities, from the hospitals, from everywhere, to the community level to use satellite data and satellite information to solve the local problem. I have it in the book I wrote. It's there. If anybody would pick it and look at it. In Europe, through the European Space Agency, they invite European companies to compete. And they put the money on the table. This is what we want to do. This is where we want to go. They have their own advisors that is advising Europe on what to do in space, all right? But the European countries themselves, they don't have the capability, but there are capabilities in different countries. So they put the contract out and invite them. They do the same thing in the US. The US called it submit a research proposal. And there are some Nigerians submitting proposals to NASA today to be able to function. So it's going to take us a long time to get to this level. But it's there. Brazil is doing the same thing, passing laws that will enable the private sector to participate in contributing to development government. But all these laws are meant to give the countries ability to invent, to design, to build locally, rather than to acquire capabilities from abroad. Because the capability you acquire, but you have no capability to maintain, is no capability.
Thank you so much.
And this is where the private sector comes in. We need to respect the capabilities of our private sector. Because if we want to do something, you have people there. Maybe they are not the 4-star companies, but look at them. The company you are bringing from abroad was a 0-star or 1-star company at one time, but it got support from its own government. What are you doing here locally? You want that 4-star company. When are you going to grow yours?
Prof, I, on that note, would ask you for your concluding remarks.
I have a lot of concluding remarks. I have two of them in particular. One is for the young people, particularly the young professionals who may be looking to follow my own path in space or any path. I'm going to ask them first and foremost to be proficient in whatever field of endeavor they want to undertake in life, and to learn to work cooperatively. No, a single man does not make an island. Okay? Then, wherever they might go, they need to do a lot of listening and less talking. Okay? And they need to do their best at every time. Every time, do your best, nothing more. Do your best. Once you believe you've done your best, forget it. That's my way. That's the way I believe we should do. Then you also have to realize that you are going to make mistakes as you go along, because nobody is perfect in life. Nobody, including myself, including any young man. And they're going to face challenges. And in facing those challenges, they need to be partners with courage, with hope, with kindness, with friendliness, and with humility. Because these are the elements that will sustain you in life wherever you go, on the job, outside the job. And again, they should, when you get a job, particularly an international job or even a local job, I have three questions for you. One question. And the question is, what do you consider to be the most important day for you on this new job? Your first day? Or along the road, that juicy, unexpected, and exaggerated promotion that you got? Or your very last day? And I don't know why, but I remember when I was leaving the UN and there were some vacancies, some of the African colleagues who were applying for this course approached me and we talked. And I asked them these questions. And it was baffling. What type of questions are these? Okay, for me, my answer is very simple. It is not your first day because you don't know anything about the job. It's not that juicy salary because if you don't perform well, they can kick you out. It is your very last day. Because that very last day gives you an opportunity to look back and see whether, as you are leaving the office, because this is something that I saw and I experienced. When you are leaving that office the last day, are you holding your head down or are you holding your head up? Are people clapping and crying because you are leaving them? Or they're saying, oh, thank God he's going. We got rid of him. And all of that is based on your integrity on the job. It is something you must value. So, and finally, I say, under difficult circumstances, never panic, but take a hold of yourself and put on your thinking cap and let God do the rest for you. Believe that as God did and continues to do for you, He will not let you down. He will guide you even when you cannot see the way forward. God will empower you to make a difference, because that is what is most important, to make a difference and be an agent of change, not only in your village or in your town or in your country, but globally. And but for the African countries themselves, I have something else about space I would like to add. When we want to talk about space in Africa, I would like the African countries, possibly through the auspices of the African Union, to put together an African delegation. But not just a delegation of knowledgeable people from each interested country. They come from their parliament, a representative of their parliament, a representative of academic community, a representative of the scientific and technical NGOs, like the Academy of Sciences or Academy of Engineering. And if they have a space agency, let somebody from that agency be there, from each country that is interested, and probably somebody from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who can go with them. And let them tour some countries, particularly India, South Korea, Brazil, South Africa, and try and find out from each of them, how did they succeed in what they've been doing space-wise? What is the relationship between the leadership and the rest that are working there? How do they set goals? And why am I asking for this? Because we need to know what makes them tick, what makes them succeed. Because we also want to succeed like they do. Because when you go to South Africa today, South Africa will tell you that we are Africa's eye to the universe. When you go to India, India will tell you space is our tool of development. What is space for Africa? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Adigun Ade Abiodun. It's been a very profound journey with you today. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation and for leading us through your career in space and to the very good finishing on your concluding remarks to not just the audience watching this blog, but also to African states who are desirous of building an innovative and creative space industry. Dr. Adigun's book, Nigeria's Space Journey, Understanding Its Past, Reshaping Its Future. The link has been put here for anyone interested in getting a copy of his book. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the season finale of the More to Space Than Air vlog for the spring series. I am looking forward to welcoming everyone again during the fall 2023. I would like to appreciate our sponsors, the Space Futures Forum of the Caribbean Space Society, for their very supportive role in bringing this vlog from our stables to your platform. Thank you.